I was the invisible kid. Until I found a $47,000 brooch in Grandma's junk drawer. The brooch slipped out of a plastic baggie, landed in my palm, and I swear, time froze. It was heavier than it looked. Cold. Sharp-edged. A kind of quiet royalty to it. I'd seen fake jewelry before, Grandma Marie had drawers full of it, but this piece buzzed. Like it knew it didn't belong with the rest of the junk. And I wasn't supposed to find it. Not that day. Not ever. Let me rewind. I'm Tom. And growing up, I was basically the family houseplant. Present, often watered, but never really noticed. Especially after my sister Rachel arrived, 2 months early and with enough medical drama to justify Mom turning our entire house into a germaphobe's fantasy land. Seriously, hand sanitizer stations in every room. The whole place smelled like a haunted hospital. Rachel was delicate. Special. The miracle baby. I was resilient. Which, in our house, was code for, she can take the hit. You could say I disappeared in plain sight. Rachel got the attention. I got rerouted to Grandma's every time I so much as sneezed. Eventually, I stopped bothering to earn their praise. Straight A's? Ignored. Science fair winner? Meh. Perfect SAT score. They actually shushed me because Rachel had a math quiz the next day. Yeah. That kinda household. But Grandma Marie? She saw me. Not like, oh, sweetie, you're so special, no. She saw me because I saw her. Her quirks. Her stories. Her ridiculous collection of costume jewelry she never wore but lovingly organized like a little pirate hoard. She let me catalog it, piece by piece. Gave me a tiny label maker and everything. I'd line them up by decade, style, shine. It became our thing. Our secret world in the middle of all the family chaos. Fast forward to last summer, I was home after college, temping at a dusty little auction house downtown. Grandma had asked me to help reorganize her attic for the 4th time, translation. She missed me and wanted to dish family gossip while we dug through old boxes. That's when I opened the drawer. The drawer that stuck halfway, because it hadn't been opened in decades. The one hidden behind a stack of 70s casserole dishes and a bag of expired mothballs. It had no label. No reason to even exist. I yanked it open. It creaked like something out of a horror movie. And there it was. The brooch. It looked like something a movie villain's wife would wear while plotting an aristocratic coup. Sharp triangles, deep emerald stones, gold lacing so detailed it felt intentional. Not costume level. Not fake. Gram, I called. What's this one? It wasn't in the binder. She squinted from her recliner, Coke bottle glasses slipping down her nose. Oh that? Humph. Just a doodad your grandpa picked up in Europe. Probably fake. She said it like it was a dismissal. But I could hear something else in her voice, hesitation. And I knew my grandmother well enough to catch a lie, even when she served it with shortbread cookies. That night, I stayed up researching. Every hinge, clasp, setting. I traced its style, Art Deco. I looked for hallmarks. That's when I found a tiny signature carved along the underside. Cartier. I stared at it for a long, long time. Couldn't sleep. And that's when it hit me, if I was right, if this was what I thought it was, then I hadn't just found a piece of jewelry. I'd found my way in. The next morning, I walked into my job at the auction house and asked for a meeting with Mr. Harrison, the kind of guy who wore silk ties and smelled like old money and stronger cologne. I was shaking. Sir, I said, clutching a manila folder, I think I found something. Something important. He barely looked up. We already catalogued the Kingston estate, Miss Stevens. It's not from the Kingston estate, I said. And then, I opened the folder. Cartier? Mr. Harrison dropped his coffee. It shattered right on the marble floor of the conference room, exploded like a scene from a slow-motion crime show. No one even blinked. All eyes were on me. This was not the reaction I expected. Where did you say you found this? He asked, voice suddenly serious. No more nose in his phone sarcasm. He was wide awake now. In my grandma's attic, I said. Back of a drawer. She thought it was fake. Harrison leaned forward, lifting the brooch from the velvet tray I'd prepped. He squinted at the signature. The room got very quiet. Miss Stevens, this might be real. And just like that, I wasn't invisible anymore. Let's back up 48 hours. After I spotted the signature, I dove headfirst into research. Like, deep dive. Nerd mode activated. I pulled out my old debate binders. Made flashcards. Created a PowerPoint for one piece of jewelry. Yeah. I know. I didn't sleep that night. Or the next. I even shelled out $89 of my own money for an online gemology course just to make sure I wasn't about to embarrass myself in front of my boss and his army of antique snobs. Turns out, that $89 was the best money I've ever spent. Because this brooch, this little Art Deco triangle of emerald and gold, was not just some fancy fake. It had the exact same clasp style, signature font, and weight specs as a limited edition piece made in 1925 by Cartier for a Parisian duchess. There were only 3 in existence. And now maybe 4. You know that moment when something clicks in your brain and you just know? Like the universe finally points a spotlight at you and says, yup, this one right here, it's your time. That was me, hunched over my laptop in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by old Nancy Drew books and piles of fake pearls. The next day, I dressed like someone who owned the room. Straight blazer, hair tight, folder under my arm. I didn't ask for an appointment. I just walked into the glass conference room at the auction house and said, I need 10 minutes of Mr. Harrison's time. Bold? Yes. But you can't half-send a missile, right? He walked in, clearly annoyed, holding a paper cup of overpriced espresso. I said one word, Cartier, and the man forgot gravity existed. Back to the present. He examined every angle. Pulled out his own loupe. Whispered something to one of the senior appraisers. 5 minutes later, 2 more experts were in the room. Then someone wheeled in a reference binder the size of a microwave. I was just standing there. Forgotten. Watching them swarm over something I had found. I should have been annoyed. But for once, I didn't care. I wasn't some overlooked kid anymore. Where's the provenance? One of them asked. Attic drawer. No paperwork, I admitted. But my grandfather was in France during the 1940s. He brought back all kinds of things. Grandma said he picked it up in Europe. Military service? Harrison asked. Army medic. The room went still again. A whisper of possibility hung in the air. Harrison turned back to me. We'll authenticate it properly, he said. Run lab tests. Dig into its chain of custody. But, Tom, if this is what I think it is. He paused, then smiled. You just put us on the map. And that was it. The switch. The start. Because in the weeks that followed, things changed fast. Suddenly, I wasn't just the intern who alphabetized lampshades and dusted off tea sets. I was the girl who found the brooch. The whisper echoing through antique circles. The one who spotted gold in a pile of plastic. And back at home? Let's just say. Rachel noticed. Rachel lunged for the jewelry box and screamed. That brooch is mine, Tom. Grandpa gave it to me. Yup. She waited until the brooch hit the auction catalog to stake her claim. She hadn't seen it in 15 years, didn't even know it existed last week. But now that it was worth 47 grand. Suddenly, it was her treasured childhood memory. Plot twist, she called Grandma a liar. To her face. Let's rewind. The brooch had officially cleared authentication. The lab results came in, and every tiny detail matched Cartier's 1925 Parisian line. The enamel. The metal composition. The microscopic stamp on the clasp that barely survived the century. It was the real deal. Estimated value? $35,000 minimum. Harrison looked like a kid on Christmas morning. Once it hits the right collector, he said, you might even fetch $50,000. That number felt unreal. Like it belonged in someone else's story. But then, it became very real. Because the auction house sent an official release to the family. You know, paperwork stuff. Legal consent to list the item. Grandma had to sign off. Which meant, the brooch re-entered family radar. And Rachel? She smelled money faster than she ever smelled attention. It started with a group text. Rachel, hey, what's this thing Tom's selling from Grandma's house? Mom, some antique brooch? No idea. Me, it's from Grandpa's trunk. Grandma said it's fine. I got it appraised. Rachel, pretty sure he gave that to me, actually. Me, you were 3 when he died. Rachel, exactly. It was sentimental. That was her whole case. Sentimental vibes. I ignored it. Grandma didn't. She called me, fuming. Your sister just accused me of stealing from her, she said. In my own house. Over a piece she didn't even know existed. I offered to pull the listing. Grandma said no. Let it sell, she said. Let it shine. Cue Rachel's meltdown. 3 days before the auction, Rachel showed up at Grandma's house. No warning. No invitation. Just strolled in like a hurricane with eyebrows. I was there finalizing the item transfer. She burst into the room, snatched the display case, and said, I knew it. This is the one. He gave it to me when I was little. I remember it. Now remember, this is the same girl who once cried because her mood ring turned green and she thought it meant she had food poisoning. But sure, now she's a jewelry expert with photographic memory from toddlerhood. I asked her to hand it back. Calmly. She clutched it to her chest like she was on a soap opera. Then she looked right at Grandma and said, You gave away my heirloom to the person who's done nothing for this family. And that's when Grandma, bless this woman, took her hearing aids out. Literally just popped them out and said, Not listening to this crap today. I had to walk outside because I almost choked laughing. Rachel stormed off, muttering about calling a lawyer. I told her to go ahead, but just in case, I had already taken video of Grandma confirming the story 2 weeks earlier. And a signed affidavit. You think Debate Club didn't teach me preemptive strikes? Auction day came. The brooch went for $47,000 even. I got a small commission through the auction house, but more importantly, I got respect. Mr. Harrison even offered to mentor me in authentication work. And Rachel? She posted a sad black and white Instagram story captioned, Some people only love you when you're useful. Ma'am. You tried to commit emotional burglary over a brooch. The director slammed the report on my desk and barked. Did you seriously authenticate a 6-figure piece without looping in the board? My stomach dropped. Not because I'd made a mistake. But because, for one terrifying second, I thought I hadn't. Let's go back 3 weeks. Fresh off the brooch sale, I was on a roll. The girl who used to alphabetize tea sets? She was now Tom the Sleuth. That's what the head archivist actually called me. She also once wore 3 scarves at once, so grain of salt. But then came the Rothschild collection. Biggest estate project of the year. Old money. Real money. As in, portraits of dead relatives wearing tiara, level wealth. The family had entrusted the auction house with everything, furniture, paintings, silverware, and yes, jewelry. It was an authentication playground. And I was given access. I wasn't in charge, not even close, but I was trusted to catalog a few lower-tier items. Stuff like Victorian hairpins and coral necklaces. Most of it was standard fare. Until I saw it. A brooch, again, yeah, I know, but this one was different. More delicate. Flowing curves, not sharp angles. Art Nouveau. Soft rose gold loops with a pale sapphire in the center. Everyone else had already passed it by. Pretty, someone had said. But costume. But the way it shimmered in the light, the way the sapphire caught the sun just right, made my gut say otherwise. So I looked closer. And what do you know? Tiny initials etched in the back. A.L. Alphonse Lemoyne. A French jeweler whose private collection disappeared during World War II. The piece didn't match any catalogued examples, but everything else aligned: material, construction, hallmarks, and clasp type. It was too perfect. My hands were shaking. But here's the thing. I didn't tell anyone. Why? Because after the brooch drama with Rachel, I wanted one win that was just mine again. So I started building the case privately. Quiet research. Cross-checking archives. Even emailed a museum contact under the radar. By the time I compiled my findings, I was 90% sure it was real. Worth easily over $200,000. So I slid the file into Harrison's inbox, fully documented, labeled, complete. No drama. And then, he blew up. You should have flagged this. Do you know what happens if we misrepresent a historical piece at that value? I stood there frozen. Heart racing. Hands sweating. I wasn't sure you'd take it seriously until I had enough data, I said. You don't get to decide that, he snapped. That's not how chain of command works here. I'd never seen him that mad. And I don't blame him. Because behind the scenes, the board had been nervous about the Rothschild sale. Too much money. Too many eyes. One mistake and the entire firm could get sued into a historical reenactment. I thought I was doing the right thing, being thorough, careful. I was so close to being right. Turns out, I was. 3 days later, after a second round of testing, outside verification, and a frantic call to a European museum curator, the brooch was confirmed. Final sale price, $238,000. And the head of the board personally apologized to me. But Harrison? He pulled me aside afterward and said, "You've got talent, no doubt. But if you're going to work in this world, you have to learn to play the game." Then he smiled. Like, a real one. And maybe, you're meant to change the game. That night, I sat in my studio apartment surrounded by jewelry, books, printouts, and sticky notes, the little fortress of knowledge I'd built since college. And I realized something. I wasn't just good at this. I was built for this. I had the eye. The obsession. The need to know the story behind every clasp, gem, and curve. That night, something clicked in me. A switch. This wasn't just a job anymore. It was a calling. Yup. I walked out of the most prestigious auction house in the city. And moved into a storage room that smelled permanently like Kung Pao chicken and broken dreams. No windows. One flickering light bulb. And Wi-Fi that only worked if I held my laptop out the window while sitting on an upside-down recycling bin. It was perfect. Here's what went down. After the Rothschild brooch blew up, everything changed. Suddenly I was getting pulled into higher-end appraisals, working side by side with collectors I used to Google stalk in college. Harrison even hinted that they might create a position for me. Head of Vintage Authentication. Big title. Bigger pressure. But here's the thing. It didn't feel like mine. Because the credit still went to the firm. The board. The glossy name on the door. No one cared that I'd pulled that brooch from the scrap pile and basically resurrected a lost piece of French history. They cared that it sold. That's it. I kept thinking about that quote. Build your own dream, or someone will hire you to build theirs. So, I jumped. No savings plan. No business degree. No backup job. Just one very stubborn belief. I'm damn good at this, and I don't need a velvet office to prove it. The only place I could afford was a ratty little room above Ming's Garden, a family-run takeout spot that made killer dumplings and questionable rent agreements. The landlord said, "It's yours if you don't mind the smell." I didn't. I bought a used card table off Craigslist. Rescued a desk chair from a curb. Hung up a whiteboard I found in an alley, still had old chemistry equations scribbled on it. Then I duct-taped a piece of cardboard to the window frame that said, Authentica, Vintage Jewelry Verification and Appraisal. Boom. We were open for business. First few weeks? Quiet. Painfully quiet. I'd wake up at 4:30 a.m., go for a run to clear my head, then spend the rest of the day relabeling old jewelry prints and cold emailing antique shops. No responses. One client wandered in because they thought I was selling dumplings. But little by little, the word got out. A dealer I knew from the auction house brought in a box of Victorian lockets. A retired collector wanted help confirming whether his wife's ring was really Tiffany. Someone even brought in a supposed Titanic survivor's pendant. It wasn't real, but man, that research rabbit hole was wild. I charged less than the big firms. Offered quick turnarounds. And more importantly, I cared. Obsessively. People noticed. Then one day, the email hit. Subject line, urgent, private collection review request. It was from a name I'd seen in industry newsletters, a low-key billionaire who collected rare heirlooms like other people collect Starbucks mugs. He wanted a second opinion on 3 pieces before buying them at a private auction. Asked if I could meet the next day. I said yes. Then immediately panicked, because I didn't even own a printer. I cleaned the office until 2 a.m., Febreze the walls, and begged the owners of Ming's Garden to please not deep fry anything the next morning until after 11. They agreed. in exchange for a free brooch appraisal. True story. The next day, the client arrived. Sharp suit. Rolex. Smelled like money and mint leaves. I gave him my honest take on all three pieces. One was legit. One was wildly overpriced. And one was a forgery. He didn't say much. Just nodded. Then he stood, shook my hand, and said, "Most people would have told me what I wanted to hear. You didn't. That's rare." He wired me a $5,000 consulting fee on the spot. And just like that, Authentica was real. I stared at the business card she handed my client. It had my company's name on it. My logo. My tagline. Only, her name. Rachel. My sister. And she had just introduced herself as the founder of Authentica. Let's rewind. Again. Business had been booming. A few viral appraisals, including a $92,000 emerald bracelet someone thought was a Claire's special, had made waves on antique forums. Suddenly, I was flooded with appointment requests. I had to move out of the Chinese food dungeon and into a proper space. It had windows. A door that didn't stick. Even a coffee maker that didn't taste like battery acid. I was still the only employee, no interns, no assistants. Just me, a Rolodex of collectors, and $1 million gut instinct. But then came the call. A Hollywood stylist wanted help authenticating a jewelry lot for an A-lister's red carpet debut. Huge exposure. The kind of job that could cement me as the name in indie authentication. So I booked the appointment. Reserved a private studio space. Prepped for 3 days straight. And then, she walked in. Rachel. Not with flowers. Not with an apology. With a client. My client. The stylist, let's call her Natalie, looked between us awkwardly. "Wait, you two know each other?" Rachel beamed. "Of course. I'm his sister. I'm also co-founder of Authentica." No. No, no, no. I swallowed hard and tried to stay composed. "Oh, I think there's been some confusion," I said, as calmly as I could. "I started Authentica last year. Solo. Rachel's not part of the business." Rachel laughed. "Tom, come on. We brainstormed it together. Remember our late-night talks at Grandma's? The label maker? This whole jewelry thing was our idea." Natalie looked very uncomfortable. "I just want to work with whoever's legit." "I'm legit," I said flatly. "Rachel hasn't worked in authentication a single day. She doesn't even know what a hallmarked clasp looks like." Rachel turned to her. "She's just upset. Sibling stuff. You know how it is." Then she winked at me. Winked. Like this was some private prank. After the meeting, which I somehow salvaged by walking Natalie through 3 on-the-spot appraisals, Rachel waited until she left, then said, "You're blowing this way out of proportion. I was just helping." "Helping? You hijacked my brand. You printed fake business cards." "They're not fake. I'm your sister. That counts for something." "No, Rachel. It counts for nothing. Not here. Not anymore." That was the last time I spoke to her face to face. A few days later, I got a cease and desist letter. From Rachel's new startup, Authentique. Yeah. With an A. Because pretentious spelling equals credibility, I guess. She claimed I stole the idea from her. That I was misrepresenting the brand. She even sent out a press release to antique blogs, framing herself as the true visionary behind our joint concept. She'd taken my story, and tried to rewrite herself into the lead. For a minute, I panicked. I didn't have a legal team. She had some lawyer friend from college with an ego and a .com email address. I had a cat and 3 half-used notebooks of gemology notes. But then, I remembered who I was. The invisible kid. The one who'd built something out of a drawer full of junk. The one who'd turned rejection into revenue. I called a real attorney. Showed him every receipt, every registration, every date-stamped document. I had it all. Within a week, her site was taken down. Her press release retracted. Authentique was dead on arrival. But the trust? That was gone for good. That's what the investor said. Across a mahogany table, flanked by 2 assistants, 3 binders, and a Rolex I'm pretty sure cost more than my old car. And me? Tom, the kid no one noticed, now being offered $1.2 million to sell part of the business I built above a Chinese restaurant. I should have been celebrating. But my gut was screaming, don't do it. It all started with a casual DM. Love what you're building. Let's talk growth. The sender? Logan Pierce. A mid-level tech bro turned angel investor with a podcast, a PR team, and a talent for buzzwords. I ignored him at first. Thought it was spam. Then he emailed. Then he called. Then he showed up at my office with cold brew and a six-figure smile. You've got something rare here, Tom, he said. Authentica isn't just a boutique service, it's a movement. We help you scale, you become the face of modern authentication. He offered funding, branding, office space, a full team. But here was the catch. They wanted 51% ownership. That's right, majority control. I told them I needed time. In the meantime, I did my homework. Looked into the other businesses they'd funded. One flopped, one exploded, and one, well, that one filed a lawsuit against Logan's firm for breach of contract and intellectual theft. So yeah. Red flags? Flying like it was the 4th of July. Still, the offer stayed in my head. $1.2 million could change my life. I could hire a real team. Move into a legitimate office. Launch a training program. Heck, maybe even take a weekend off. But every time I thought about signing the papers, I kept seeing my old duct-taped whiteboard. The one I'd hung up in that greasy upstairs room. The one that reminded me why I started this in the first place. Not for investors. Not for viral moments. Not for money. But because I loved the hunt. The story. The truth behind the shine. Then came the real twist. Rachel. Yeah. She heard about the deal. And in true Rachel fashion, she decided she deserved a piece. I got an email from her business manager, aka her best friend from college who once sold leggings on Instagram, demanding a sit-down to discuss Rachel's stake in the brand origin. Stake. In my company. The same company she tried to sabotage, steal clients from, and falsely represent on social media. My lawyer shut it down fast, but the timing couldn't have been worse. Logan's team caught wind of the drama and started getting twitchy. You're not the only authentication brand we're looking at, Logan said during our final meeting. You've got the skills, Tom, but you've also got family baggage. That's not scalable. Scalable. I wanted to laugh. Or throw something. Maybe both. So I did what I always do when things fall apart. I called Grandma. Still sharp, still sarcastic, and still the only person who ever made me feel like I wasn't invisible. I told her the whole thing. She didn't say much until the end. Then she said, "You didn't build this business to sell it. You built it because no one else believed in you. So now you believe in it. And tell the rest to pound sand." The next morning, I emailed Logan. Respectfully declining. Best of luck scaling your next project. I never heard back. And I didn't care. Because that same week, a private museum in New York reached out about a long-term consulting contract. Not a buyout. Not a flashy deal. Just real work. Real value. Real respect. And for the first time since the brooch, I felt steady. That's what my dad said. After 10 years of silence. After missing every graduation, every birthday, and every miserable family holiday. The man walked into my office, in a suit he definitely couldn't afford, flanked by some slimy-looking lawyer. And demanded a cut of my business. Why? Because he gave me life. I almost laughed. Almost. Here's the backstory. My dad left when I was 16. No warning. No goodbye. Just packed up his golf clubs and his favorite records and vanished like a magician with gambling debt. The story my mom gave? He needed space. The story Grandma gave? He needed to stop being a selfish jackass. Guess who I believed? He never paid child support. Never called. He showed up once, randomly, during my sophomore year of college, drunk, broke, and asking if he could crash for a bit. I told him no. He called me ungrateful. Haven't seen him since. Until now. I was meeting with a new client, a museum curator from Boston, when the receptionist buzzed in. "Tom, there's a Mr. Edwards here to see you. Says he's your father." And, he brought a lawyer. My stomach dropped. I stepped out into the lobby. There he was. Same smug smirk. Thinner hair. Fake confidence still fully intact. "Tommy boy," he said like we were grabbing lunch. I ignored the greeting. "Why are you here?" He smiled like he'd rehearsed the line. "Well, I hear business is booming. And seeing as how I'm your father, I figure it's only fair I get a piece of the action." I blinked. "You're kidding." The lawyer, a man with suspenders and soulless eyes, chimed in. "Legally, Mr. Edwards has a potential claim to any intellectual property developed during your adolescence under the parental guidance and support he provided." Parental guidance. This man once grounded me for being too quiet. He thought gemology was a type of seafood. I kept it cool. "Get out." "Tom," my dad said, putting a hand over his heart like he was in a courtroom drama, "I'm not here to fight. I just think there's a way for both of us to win." "You're not part of this," I said. "You never were." "That's not true. I taught you how to spot value. Remember baseball cards? Antique coins? That's where it started." "No, Grandma taught me value. He taught me abandonment." I walked back into the office, locked the door, and called my lawyer. She laughed when I told her. "Not a chance. He has zero claim. But keep everything he sends. These types love to escalate." She was right. 2 days later, I got a letter. He was threatening to sue unless we settled out of court. He wanted $300,000. Said it was fair compensation for the entrepreneurial spirit he instilled in me. I wanted to light the letter on fire. Instead, I filed it away. And then I went home and got mad. Not because of the money. But because I remembered all the years I'd spent thinking maybe I wasn't enough. That maybe I wasn't the kind of kid anyone stuck around for. And now, because I'd made something out of the nothing he left behind, he wanted in? Nah. Not a chance. So I did what I do best. I wrote a response. Not legal, just personal. I mailed it to his lawyer's office. "You don't get to show up for the payout when you skipped the struggle. You don't get to call yourself Dad now that I've finally built something you didn't believe in. And if you try to drag this into court, I'll happily share every detail of your exit, publicly." He never replied. Cowards rarely do. That was the offer. A real, actual Netflix producer, with a verified email address and everything, slid into my inbox at 6:42 a.m. on a Tuesday. I thought it was spam. Or a prank. But then they called. Said the magic words. "We've been following your journey. Your story has teeth." Translation: they wanted to turn my life, the brooch, the business, the betrayal, into a docuseries. I should have been thrilled. But then came the clause. "Here's the thing," the producer said. "We've done our research. And we love the story arc, from underdog to expert. But, legal flagged some issues." "What kind of issues?" I asked. "Your sister." "Ah. Of course." Apparently, Rachel had already tried to pitch her own version of the story. Claimed she discovered the brooch. That I stole it. She even framed herself as the unrecognized visionary behind my business. Which was laughable, but dangerous. Because her pitch was rejected. And now, she was threatening to sue anyone who told her story without permission. "We can still move forward," the producer said, "but only if you agree not to mention her by name. No reference. No likeness. We'll fictionalize everything. Blur the sister character entirely." I sat there, stunned. I'd worked so hard to escape her shadow. To build something for myself. And now, she was trying to control this too? "I don't know," I said. "That feels like letting her win." The producer paused. "Tom, I get it. I do. But this isn't about her. It's about you. You've got a story millions of people need to hear. You think we care about your sister? We care about that brooch in a junk drawer. The dusty attic. The nobody who outsmarted the whole system. That's you. And that's the show." I asked for 48 hours. And I spent it pacing. Thinking. Replaying every moment in this crazy journey. I remembered being the kid no one clapped for. The teenager eating microwave mac and cheese while my family toasted Rachel's C+ in English at Olive Garden. The college freshman moving into his dorm alone because Rachel had a cheerleading thing. The guy who found a $47,000 brooch, and nobody in his family even called to say congrats. And I thought, maybe I don't need to say her name. Maybe I don't want to. Because this story? It isn't hers. It's mine. So I signed the deal. We changed names. Merged timelines. Invented a fictional ex-friend who symbolized everything Rachel had done. And when the first script came in, it was fire. Funny. Sharp. Honest. They got it. They got me. Production starts this fall. I'm not playing myself, thankfully, but I get final script approval. And the real kicker? The showrunner used to work at the same auction house that once made me clean coffee stains off vintage rugs. Small world. My name's going to roll in the credits. As a consulting producer. From invisible to executive. That was the subject line of the email. It hit my inbox 3 hours after the Netflix trailer went live. A 90-second teaser with moody music, slow zooms on velvet jewelry boxes, and one killer line from the actor playing me. Sometimes, to find real value, you have to go digging through the garbage. Apparently, Rachel took that personally. Let's rewind, one last time. The trailer dropped at midnight. I wasn't even awake. But by the time I got up the next morning, my phone looked like it had been electrocuted. Missed calls. DMs, emails. Texts from people I hadn't spoken to in a decade. The teaser hit number 3 on YouTube, trending within 6 hours. People were obsessed. The underdog story. The antiques. The betrayal. But mostly, the mystery sister. See, the writers blurred the real name, called her Emily in the show. But if you knew me, really knew me, you didn't need subtitles to figure it out. And apparently, neither did Rachel. At 9:43 a.m., she sent the email. Tom, remove the show. This is slander. Everyone knows Emily is me. My lawyer says we can file for emotional damages and defamation. She CC'd a lawyer. She also CC'd Grandma. Why? I have no clue. Grandma replied with just one sentence. This again? Legend. Here's the thing though, I wasn't worried. Netflix had lawyers stacked taller than Rachel's ego. They'd already vetted the script. Names were changed. Details were rearranged. And the real kicker? Everything in the show was based on public documentation or my first-hand experience. She had no case. But that didn't stop her from trying. Within days, her lawyer fired off a cease and desist to the production company. Then she posted a 5-minute Facebook video claiming she was the real mind behind the brand. She ended it with a dramatic line. The truth will come out. The video got 137 views. 87 were probably her refreshing the page. But here's where it gets wild. A week before the premiere, I got a call. Unknown number. New York area code. It was a woman named Danielle. A senior acquisitions editor at a major publishing house. She'd seen the trailer. Read a few of my old interviews. And she said the words I never expected to hear. Have you ever thought about writing a book? I laughed. She didn't. I'm serious. You've got a voice. You've got history. And now? You've got an audience. So guess what? Book deal signed. Working title? The Junk Drawer, How I Went from Invisible to Invaluable. I'm writing it now. Chapter by chapter. Same way I lived it. And Rachel? She's quiet. For now. Netflix didn't cave. The show aired.